You love you some Ben Ingram, and
Yeah.
I'm not trying to argue. Like he's a fantastic, analyst and a fantastic radio personality, the follower of the
Careful.
Braves, of course. But like, I mean, I'm just saying you can't get yourself enough Ben Ingram. So I'm very very interested and looking forward to seeing what you guys have to talk about and say.
So yeah, a lot of moves made by the Atlanta Braves. Yesterday they lock up Austin Riley to a long-term deal. Also some other moves being made today. Some smaller additions and some subtractions as well. You do send away the guy who got you the last out of the World Series. As much as Braves fans love to hate him because he had some loud outs. Last year's closer, Will Smith, has been dealt. So we'll dive into all of those trades coming up with Ben Ingram. But I do want to do a top 10, like eventually, of like just the best voices on our station.
On our station.
Yeah, like that. Like you hear throughout the week on our station.
Interesting. Okay.
Like Dark Horse, put BJ up there pretty high.
BJ's pretty solid. Yeah, BJ. It's not like that's the crazy thing is people hear like and think about radio voices and they all get this picture in their mind of what it needs to be. Some of the best radio voices aren't these like pristine, let's be real, aren't these like pristine Mark Douglas-y voices, right? I'm not saying Mark Douglas would be up there too. Yeah, obviously he's our production guy. He's the voice that you hear on a lot of things. But some differences are good, something that's not kind of doesn't fit that mold perfectly, I feel like is very good. I would put BJ in that category.
Dark Horse, I'd say. Dark Horse.
Voice.
But odds-on favorite, Ben Ingram. And you'll hear why coming up here at 2:15, breaking down all the Braves moves. But PJ, I teased this yesterday as something I wanted to talk about yesterday, but never got a chance to get around to it because we're talking about Georgia Southern. They're kicking off their practices today. We went around, talked to Georgia Tech. We spent a lot of time just being not very nice to Georgia Tech.
I think we were being very honest.
And I think that's fair. But I wanted to talk about a position group. I think that's kind of flying under the radar at Georgia right now. So we are Musa Smith days away from kicking off the season for the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. We are 32 days away.
There you go.
I want to do another top, like we can do 5 list of players with like the best like stadium chanting your name. Because SEC fans will remember when Musa Smith was there, it was Musa every time he touched it, even if it was like a 7-yard loss.
Those are always like really great though. Like especially the elongated like one name.
Oh
thing.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
But anyway, we're Musa Smith days away from September 3rd when Georgia kicks off against Oregon, and you know what the main storylines are. Stetson Bennett's back. He's been the number one guy for the first time in his career throughout the offseason. Saw towards the end of last year, he really was on an upward trajectory that culminated with the throw to A.D. Mitchell and then the touchdown to Brock Bowers that won you the national championship. I know Keely Ringo sealed it, but what won you the national championship was Stetson Bennett's arm, right? That ascension from about the midpoint of the season to where he really started cooking down the stretch. Now he has the full offseason of being the guy, working with the offense, Todd Monken getting to drop an offense around him. So I think that's probably the biggest storyline coming into this year is how good can Stetson Bennett in this offense be? Because I think they're going to need to be early to let a young but really talented defense catch up. Right? The first time Georgia allowed more than 13 points was against Tennessee, where they gave up 17.
Right.
Only gave up more than 18 once, and it was to Alabama in the SEC championship game. So I think there's probably going to be a couple of games early in the season where against good teams where you have to score some points to win the football game, right?
Sure.
Eventually, I think this defense will be elite and probably top 3 defense in the country, but you're going to have to win some games with your offense. So I think that's the biggest storyline. Other biggest storylines, obviously, the defense, who replaces all that talent that you lost to the NFL. But one group in particular I don't think is being talked about enough is the wide receiver group. Because I think it is a battle between a lot of really talented guys for a lot of really limited reps. last year against Clemson, we saw a lot of 4 wide receiver sets from Georgia. And you had a lot of injuries at that wide receiver position. So guys like Jalen Johnson, Justin Robinson were taking a lot of snaps. Guys you didn't hear from for the rest of the year. And this is before, I know Ladd McConkey played in that Clemson game, but this is before the Ladd McConkeys had really started taking over, before the A.D. Mitchells stepped up and became who they were. Kyrus Jackson was dealing with a little bit of injury early in the year, but eventually he came back. It was taken over. Dominic Blaylock looks like a guy who missed last year, who's going to be a significant contributor to this team. So wide receiver, I think, is a position group to watch, because if they can be as good as I think they can be, this offense is going to be really dynamic, right? We all know about the tight end group.
Sure.
Best tight end group in the country. You have the best tight end in the country in Brock Bowers. You might have the second best, depending on if you can get back to form, and Eric Gilbert. And then you have a freak of a weapon with Darnell Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all those guys, and Todd Monken's going to have to find a creative way to use them, but you're not going to run out there like Wisconsin.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
4 tight end sets, running back, and just handing the football off and running a lot of crossing and mesh routes. No, you're going to be in the shotgun. You're going to have a couple wide receivers on the field. I'm just curious who it's going to be. Because if I had to say who the best wide receivers on your team right now are, probably A.D. Mitchell and then Ladd McConkey.
Right.
If you want to talk about best all-around wide receivers.
Just pure talent.
Yeah. If you want to talk about who the most solid receivers are, if you had to go with 3-4 wide receivers, Kyrus Jackson, I'm certainly put him up there. I'd love to see Dominic Blaylock get back, but we don't know. And then you have the kind of wild cards, right? Where you have the home run hitters like an Arian Smith, where it's been flashes that he's unbelievable. You just can't stay on the field.
Right.
So that to me is kind of one of those, what is this group going to end up shaking out as? Because what we saw at the beginning of last year is completely different than what took the field in the national championship.
Yeah, so true. It's going to be interesting to see just kind of how it forms out, right? Because like you said, you start out the season with some games that you need that score.
Oregon is not a pushover. I know a lot of people are sitting there thinking that they're a top 10 team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even with think about it, right? Even with the disappointment of last year for Oregon, it was really one team that was just had their number.
And they didn't fire their coach because the team was bad. Their coach took another job.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they went and took your defensive coordinator.
Right, for sure. So yeah, like you said, it's not a pushover. You're gonna have to score some points there. So I believe we'll see, especially in those early games, probably a commitment to those guys that we saw later in the year making those big plays. But who fills out the rest of that? Who when they get a breather after a big play, who comes on and doesn't drop off, right?
I think Georgia is incredibly deep at that wide receiver position, and you're not a team that's going to be running 4 and 5 wide receivers out there. So it's going to be interesting to me to see who the battle is and how it shakes out as who are the ones for this team. We got to take a quick break. We're going to come back. As we mentioned, Ben Ingram, voice of the Atlanta Braves, joining us next right here on ESPN Radio. Welcome back into Second Down right here on ESPN Radio. Christian Gokel, glad to have you hanging out with us here on this Tuesday afternoon. The Braves back after an off day yesterday. 3.5 games behind the New York Mets, but just because it was an off day yesterday doesn't mean the Braves were not busy. Alex Anthopoulos with a ton of deals yesterday. To break it down, a guy that you hear on this station almost nightly, one of the voices of the Atlanta Braves, Ben Ingram, kind enough to take some time with us. Ben, I appreciate it, man. I know a busy part of the schedule for you guys. Thanks for hopping on with us.
You got it, Christian. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. First question, though, and I know there's a lot of player deals we have to get to, and it's exciting times seeing the Atlanta Braves spend as much money as they are right now. But, man, I got to ask. I saw that ring that you guys were presented. How many times have you, alone in your house, just put it on and walked around with it?
It's probably happened more times than I'm willing to admit, to be quite honest. There have been times where you'll just raise open the box just to look at it. There have been a few times I put it on just to feel the weight of it all. You definitely never forget that it's on once you put it on your hand because it is so heavy. But I've worn it outside the house probably 5 or 6 times, and I've definitely put it on, just kind of walked around with it a handful of times for sure.
I mean, I don't know if I would ever take it off, but as I mentioned, going for another one, right? You got to add a second ring to that hand. The Atlanta Braves making some moves over the past couple of days. Let's start with the Austin Riley news, a guy who we were talking about this yesterday. Beginning of last season, the Braves didn't know who their third baseman was, right? That might have been the biggest storyline going into the year. It's like, yeah, Austin Riley's good. He came up, he was hitting all these home runs, but he couldn't hit a curveball. And then as the year progressed, the dude turned into a legit MVP candidate. And in my mind, at least right now, probably should be top of the list in the NL. So just over the past couple of years, how cool has it been to see him develop and now get his paycheck?
It really is a great transition to watch him go from where he was a couple of years ago to where he is now. I felt like last year that he deserved attention for the MVP running in the National League last season. I believe he finished 7th. For my money, he was a top 5 player in the National League last year. Well, right now, he looks like the best player in the National League. I go back to when we were at spring training a few years ago, and the question was, who's your third baseman, Riley or Camargo? And I didn't understand the conversation. Not to take anything away from Johan Camargo, I just felt like Austin Riley had significantly higher upside defensively and offensively, and that's proven to be true. And it goes to show you that when a player gets to the big leagues, he is far from a finished product. I mean, we expect these studs to get to the big leagues at 21, 22, 23 years old and just blow our doors off. Well, the big leagues aren't that easy. It's not easy to just come here and be a star. It takes time. And we've seen his talent continue to grow, get better and better. I thought he could be a 260, 265 hitter with 30 home runs. Well, now he's turning into a guy who can hit 40 to 50 home runs and go hit 300. That's amazing. And that just shows you how hard he's been willing to work. It shows you how hard that he's pushed the limits of his talent and how much he's gotten after it. I think it's been great to watch. And defensively, he's been terrific as well. I think he was a little bit shaky defensively at one point, but credit to Ron Washington for all the work that he's done with Austin. And it's turned him into a complete player, and he's the kind of guy that you want as your franchise player for a long time. And the Braves made sure of that with the contract yesterday.
So I guess just a couple more guys that fans are out there looking and saying, okay, when is this deal going to get done? Dansby Swanson, obviously, and Max Fried. Where do you think the team stands with those two guys?
I'm sure they're having conversations, and I've told this to some other people who've asked me similar questions. Just because they got the deal done with Austin doesn't mean that they've been neglecting Dansby and Max. I think that Alex is constantly communicating with the representation for these players. He knows the business side of things. He knows what he can work with monetarily, and he knows when things need to get done. I would expect that he has been in contact and communicating regularly with the representation for both of those guys. I think we could all be safe in saying that it would be a great deal to have both of them here long term. And what that's worth to the Braves, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. What those players think they're worth, we'll have to wait and see there as well. But I think that both players would like to stay at Atlanta, and I think Atlanta would like to have them stay here. Now, a year ago, I said the same thing about Freddie Freeman. I didn't think that the water is going to be so polluted by his representation the way that they were. That's the business side of things, and it didn't work out. But that's a very rare set of circumstances, and I feel like between now and by the time these guys get too deep into free agency, they'll have offers from the Braves. I think both of them want to be here in Atlanta for a while.
Now, some other moves being made by the Atlanta Braves. hopefully ones that are as impactful as last year at the All-Star break. But first off, Will Smith getting dealt to the Houston Astros for Jake Odorizzi, a right-handed pitcher. Before we talk about what the Braves got, I know he's a guy who caught a lot of flack during his time with the Braves because, yeah, he had a lot of loud outs. But when it comes down to it, Will Smith, the guy who got the final out in the World Series. So what do you believe his legacy should be as an Atlanta Brave?
I think it'll be exactly that, Christian. I think you'll look back on his time in Atlanta, and over time, that will shine through more so than the difficulty that he may have had in the bullpen, closing games, things like that. You did something that you've not done in a very long time. You won your first World Series since 1995, and he got the final out. And oh, by the way, he had 11 scoreless innings in the postseason. That was tremendous. I mean, the Will Smith that the Braves got for that month is what they're hoping to get. But here's the thing, they got it at the right time. And I think that was the most important thing. So that's what I think people look back on and see. I think that it was probably advantageous for both sides to part ways. I think Will probably needed a new start somewhere else. And I know he wasn't here all that long, but he just, for whatever reason, was not able to get out. He was not able to hold leads. And the Braves just felt like they needed to move on from him because I think of the emergence of Dylan Lee more than anything. They had another left-hander who was able to get outs where you could be using Will Smith. We've seen Dylan use in 7th and 8th inning situations just like they would have used Will. So I think that's the biggest reason for that move. And the Braves desperately needed to pad their rotation. You do that with Jake Odorizzi. If somebody needs to be used out of a bullpen later in the season or in the postseason, you got some options. And here we are just 4 hours shy of the trade deadline, about 3.5 hours shy of the trade deadline. And I wouldn't be shocked if something else happened along the way. So be that a bullpen arm or maybe even another starter, I'm not completely sure, but I think that was a big first step yesterday in getting Jake Odorizzi in that deal for Will Smith.
How do you see Adrianza and Grossman fitting in with this team going forward?
Ada is a guy that we saw last year used in multiple situations on the infield. I think that you would feel really good putting him anywhere in the infield, and the Braves needed some backup infielders. They needed somebody who could come off the bench late and run, a defensive substitution late in the game, if you will. Ada can also play a little bit of left field if you asked him to. So he can do lots of different things. I think he brings value in terms of depth. And as far as Grossman goes, it's very similar with how we spoke about Adam Duvall. From the standpoint of he could be good against lefties. If you need a right-handed bat in a situation versus a lefty, he can be your guy. And I think they could platoon Grossman and Rosario the rest of the season. And if they can't add another outfielder, at least you feel like you're okay because you added another one in Grossman.
Now, you got a 2-game set coming up with the Phillies in Atlanta there, but then the big one coming up at the end of this week, going into the weekend, 5 games in New York. I mean, not to be hyperbolic, but could the NL East be decided this weekend?
Yeah, I think it definitely could. I mean, I don't want to put too much into one series, but you're going to see these guys 9 times over the course of August. We'll see the Mets again, 3 games here in Atlanta at the very end of September. But by then, you want to have the work done. And I think getting these opportunities head-to-head versus New York in the month of August are going to be enormous. We'll see the Phillies tonight. But when you're talking about 5 games in 4 days in New York next week, you don't want to be looking back on that and saying you missed an opportunity. You need to go up there and take at least 2 ball games, maybe even 3, and then you have them coming to Atlanta towards the end of the month. So I don't want to say that if you miss your opportunity in August that you're out of chances once you get to September, but these are huge ball games coming up here in the month of August versus the Mets.
Catching up with Ben Ingram here. You'll hear him tonight on the call of the Braves and the Phillies. Spencer Strider going for the Braves tonight. I know Braves fans excited when you see the contracts being doled out to some of the guys on the team. You have your first baseman, third baseman, center field, or well, I guess right field now, but a bunch of guys locked up for a long time, second base locked up for a long time. And it seems now the Braves have an ownership group that is willing to break off and spend money on some of these great players. I know I saw Mark Bowman of MLB.com say he wouldn't be surprised if the Braves had a top 5 payroll very, very soon. With Liberty Media, for fans that don't know, they own the Atlanta Braves and F1, willing to, I guess, break the bank and go out there and spend money on a payroll. How exciting are these next few years going to be for Braves country?
Well, it's really exciting. I mean, you want those guys here for a while, and I think the biggest reason they're able to do that is what the fans have done here at the ballpark. The fan support has been amazing. This team has been top 3 in attendance all season long. They weren't too far off the lead last year in Major League Baseball. So we're seeing sellouts virtually every single night. I think we've played 50 some odd ball games and had about 30 sellouts. So well over half the games have been sellouts, and it's good to see that kind of revenue, not just inside the stadium, but in the battery as well, and that being pumped into the payroll of the ball club and ensuring the team is going to be good for a while. Nobody wants to go through what the Nationals are going through right now. They won the World Series 3 years ago, and now they're in a complete rebuild with the trade of Juan Soto today. Just a few years ago, they had Trey Turner and Bryce Harper and Max Scherzer, and they had big contracts for Patrick Corbin, Steven Strasburg, and others. Now their roster is basically depleted. And there's a big reason for that. I think the biggest reason is they picked the wrong guys to give contracts to. But either way, no one wants to be in that situation. And given that the Braves have been able to use that money that they've created with the revenue that they've had here at the ballpark and put into Austin Riley and put into Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies and others, Matt Olson, you'd hope that they can do that for Dansby Swanson, Max Fried, and eventually keep this core here for a while, because the longer you have a talented core, especially when we're talking about guys in their mid to late 20s, ensuring that they'll be here for 6, 7, 8 years, you're ensuring that you're going to be competitive and in the postseason for a long time. And it pays to be a winner. When you're winning ball games, when you're getting into the postseason, when you're going deep into the postseason, you're making tons and tons of money, and they want to keep that stream flowing.
Ben Ingram of the Braves Radio Network, kind enough to take some time with us. Ben, when we're talking on Monday, Braves going to be in first place?
Oh, man, let's roll the dice and just go say, yeah, why not be optimistic? Let's go for it.
We love it. Ben, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much. If you want to hear some more of them, tonight, 7:20 first pitch for the Atlanta Braves as they take on the Philadelphia Phillies. Ben, thank you so much.
You got it, Christian. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, exciting times for the Atlanta Braves. 3.5 games back of the New York Mets. Got a 5-game set coming up in New York this weekend. 3 and out, going to have you completely covered up on that. We got to take a quick break. We'll be back with more right here on ESPN Radio. Appreciate Ben Ingram for taking some time to hop on with us here on Second Down, breaking down the Braves' moves. Of course, the news of the day: Juan Soto headed out to the San Diego Padres in a blockbuster trade that sent a whole lot of prospects back to the Washington Nationals. 3 and out coming up next. They will dive into that. Ton of news around Major League Baseball, of course, with the trade deadline rapidly approaching this afternoon. But we got to get back because, as I said, we are, PJ, 32 days away from the first full Saturday of college football. I know I keep saying that, but we're 25 days away from a big game. Huge game, even.
Let them know. Go ahead. Let them know who it is.
Huge game.
What's that?
Vanderbilt, Hawaii.
Let's go. It's huge for Hawaii, for sure.
10:30 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
Get after it.
That's 4:30 Hawaii time.
That's some good math, PJ.
Now that I know.
Also, that week we have Nebraska, Northwestern.
That same week?
Hell yeah.
The weekend?
Oh yeah, Saturday, August 27th.
Wow.
Nebraska, Northwestern kicking things off. Actually, your first college football game of the year. Austin Peay versus Western Kentucky.
Okay. All right.
Austin Peay. Are they the Governors?
Austin Peay. I have no idea.
And
Western Kentucky
is the Hilltoppers.
For sure the Hilltoppers, though. Like, if you ever forget that, you're probably not a college sports fan. Because the Hilltoppers are great.
We out here hilltopping. Got Wyoming, Illinois that week.
Topping all them hills.
Florida A&M, North Carolina. Listen, Duquesne taking on Florida State. No, we're not talking basketball.
Get that out of here.
I think that one's a bigger game than people give it credit for. Not because I think Florida State is going to lose to Duquesne.
Yeah.
Even though they lost to Jacksonville State last year.
They did.
So you got to be careful picking Florida State against FCS teams. But it gives them a week ahead of LSU in the Superdome.
That's true. You at least get a little bit under your belt.
I think a lot of people think LSU is going to roll Florida State in that game. I don't think that's going to happen. I think LSU probably wins that game, but I don't think they're going to roll them.
Yeah, I would agree there because Florida State has been. We all know where they've been the past 4 or 5 years, and I completely understand that. I'm not saying they're going to come out here and be 10-2 this year, but I do feel
they're
like
the Governors. Thank you very much.
Okay,
anyway, Austin Peay. Governors. Let's go.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I think Florida State does come back to the norm a little bit. They do progress a little bit, and I bring this up all the time, especially with football. Like, I think LSU is going to be good. I think LSU is going to be better than a lot of people think. But do not mistake and think down upon the importance of chemistry, especially in college football. And I'd argue college basketball as well, but especially in college football. And LSU has a ton of new players, a ton of new guys transferring in and who are going to be big factors on this team. And I know, sure, everyone off the top of their dome is like, well, Michigan State did it last year. Look how far they went.
Yeah.
They're the outlier, man. Like, to me, they're the outlier of just bringing in all these people and it all clicks right off the bat. That doesn't always happen. So I think you got a really good point there of you can look down and a lot like Notre Dame, Florida State last year, people can look down at the fourth quarter and be like, hold on a minute. This is a one-score game? What's going on? Is Brian Kelly, like, is he not using his normal voice to shout out commands? Like, what is happening?
Look, and Brian Kelly's teams will struggle early in the year. We saw Notre Dame almost lose to Florida State last year early in the season down in Doak Campbell. And listen, you're coming in, don't really know yet who the quarterback's going to be for LSU. They got some options. They have some good football players there, but none of them are, I'd say, outstanding in that quarterback room. And again, running backs, John Emery should be okay for LSU. Don't know what the offensive line is really going to look like. They have some ball players on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't think it's anything where you're like, oh yeah, they're going to run Florida State.
Right.
And Mike Norvell's kind of got a quiet confidence to him this offseason. So I'm excited about that. But Florida State's one of those teams to me where this could be a bounce back year for them.
Yep.
Right? There's a few teams like that where I think of a Nebraska. Scott Frost said a couple weeks ago, he's like, man, listen, we lost so many one-score games last year.
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
He's not.
He's not wrong. They were right there. Another team like that to me, South Carolina.
Yeah.
They were. Imagine if South Carolina had a quarterback last year.
Yeah. That
Like,
would've
no
been-
offense to Luke Doty,
for sure.
but imagine if they had a quarterback last year. They're
Yeah.
winning some football games.
Uh,
And this year, I think their
agreed.
schedule sets up pretty interesting because you start the year with Georgia State, and Georgia State's a good Sun Belt team. South Carolina should handle them.
Yeah.
And it gives Spencer Rattler a good opponent to go out there, see some quality depth against, and have to actually make some plays because the very next week, they head to Arkansas. Any other week, South Carolina heading to Arkansas, I'm like, Arkansas by 10, somewhere in there. But do you know who Arkansas plays immediately after South Carolina?
I mean,
Alabama at home.
dang. Yeah.
So
That's one of
South
those we
Carolina
talked
might
about
be
a
able,
little while ago.
South Carolina might be able to catch them looking ahead. And if Spencer Rattler can go in there and do something silly, then you're looking at a really solid 2-0 start. And after that, of course, you welcome Georgia to town. It's a noon kick. Weird things happen with Georgia, South Carolina at noon. But I mean, after that, so say like best case scenario, you come out of that 2-1.
Mhm.
You have Charlotte at home. You have South Carolina State at home, and then you head to Kentucky. So there's a legitimate shot. You're 5-1 heading in to take on a really good Kentucky team. Then you welcome in Texas A&M, play Missouri, Vanderbilt, Florida, Tennessee, and Clemson to finish the year.
Yeah. So
I
there's-
could
there's
see
some-
8 wins for South Carolina.
Yeah. I could see it. Sure. Sure. Not much more than that.
Just like Nebraska,
So-
though. I could see 8-9 wins for Nebraska last year because they made some changes on offense.
Right.
Adrian Martinez no longer the quarterback.
That's still
Where's
funny.
he at?
Like,
Is-
he's
did-
at
did-
Kansas State.
Kansas State.
Because
That's right.
that's the thing. I feel like he went to the same program. Like when you talk about offensively, and then
He like
just-
took a wrong turn at Target, and he's like, "Oh crap!
yeah, like he
Why is
just-
everything purple?"
yeah, right. Seriously, like if you think
It's
about
easy to get lost in the
just
corn mazes.
kind of the offensive struggle of both of those teams of the past 4 or 5 years, and the kind of offenses they run and whatnot, it's like he's playing for the same team, just with different colors on. It's kind of crazy. But I like Nebraska was such a weird team to me last year that like it was always painful to watch.
Oh my
but
God.
They made it painful for everybody else too. They made it painful for the other team too. They were always within one score. The best was it Oklahoma. One of the best plays from last year is that pick.
yeah,
It's late in the game. It's a 1-score game.
and then, the Oklahoma pick was like Julian Edelman in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
levitating.
It was ridiculous.
No reason to catch that football.
Like again, like you said, it's a 1-score game. Nebraska's about to upset Oklahoma, and they did that to 4 or 5 different teams last year. And if they come away with 3 of those games, we're looking at them very differently. So, yeah, I think those are very dangerous to me, though. I feel like you can get stuck in that, and you can go one of 2 ways. You can take that step and start finishing those games, or you can get stuck in that kind of, oh, we're almost there for too long. And I think South Carolina is probably better prepared, I feel like, with the acquisition of Spencer Rattler, and I feel like a really solid coaching staff as well to do that, to take that step and, finish off some of these games. Like you said,
Yeah,
with a leader there, a quarterback with a, one of those.
I like old Shane Beamer. The Thursday ahead of the college football season kicking off, or I guess I shouldn't say that, ahead of the first full Saturday is the way I've been phrasing it, is really interesting as well. You got West Virginia Pitt, which we've spoken about before, is the rematch of the former USC quarterbacks and JT Daniels and Kadon Slovis. At PJ, do you know the name of the stadium where the Pittsburgh Steelers play football?
Not anymore. No, forget that.
Because it lapsed.
gone.
It's no longer Heinz.
They literally they took the Heinz bottle down. Even like
Bunch of
couldn't even leave the remnant.
bunch
right?
of jerks.
It couldn't be. I know how the sponsors work, whatever. Like it couldn't be an associate sponsor or something. Like you really had to take it down.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but-
New stadium name, Acrisure Stadium.
sure, whatever.
Acrisure.
Yeah, Acrisure. That's how great it is. It's
PJ,
whatever.
can you give me your best
But then again, like, so is Acrisure is like, oh, we're gonna go play the Pittsburgh Panthers this weekend in Acrisure.
Can you give me your
Stadium.
best Pittsburghian Acrisure?
I don't really have a Pittsburghian in my body. Like
You just didn't.
like Ian, Like Acrisure. Like I don't even know if that's right. That's more like, yeah, I'm not very good at like
You're
Pittsburgh
gonna go drink some
accents.
irons and head down to Acrisure.
Gonna drink some irons. Yins and everybody. Go
Mhm.
to Acrisure Stadium.
It's not the same as Heinz.
Yeah, I don't know. That's really you do it really well.
I got a bunch
Like,
of
how
I
do you
got
get
a
a
I got
really
a
good Pittsburgh
bunch
accent?
I got a bunch of friends from up there, and that's you get a couple of irons in them, and that's what they sound like. But no, so again, West Virginia Pitt on that Thursday ahead of the first full Saturday, and then you have PJ, a huge game on Fox at 8 o'clock that night.
Yeah,
Penn State Purdue,
yeah,
the
yeah,
old Nittany Lions and the Boilermakers.
for sure. And we'll see if by the end of that game if Sean Clifford is still a quarterback.
That's President Sean Clifford
Yeah, it's
leading the student union in the Big Ten.
ridiculous. You know how like, nah, that's a whole nother topic. But anyway, yeah, it could be an exciting game. I feel like it could be one that's down to the wire. I don't know. It's one of those where like Purdue went and upset some people last year and did their thing. Penn State fell apart as the season went on. So like I feel like it'll be a fun opening week game, but by week 5, both of those teams could be like 3-2, 2-3, and like just forget about them. As heartbreaking as that is to say about the team I like, but it is what it is.
So fascinating one on the Friday ahead of it. Virginia Tech heads to Old Dominion.
Yeah, that is
If you in the not too distant past, Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech,
right,
and now you have to go and play at their stadium.
Yeah, was that
Our good friend?
Didn't they upset them at like? Wasn't that one of the weird ones where Virginia Tech actually went there to Old Dominion, and that's where they got the upset?
I believe so.
That's just so odd.
Yes, the Monarchs taking them down, and now
Yeah.
they're back for more.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
I want to look into like what
crazy.
this contract like. Who has something on someone at Virginia Tech to get them to play at Old Dominion twice in 4 years?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
That's Sunbelt member Old Dominion now too, by the way.
True. And no disrespect to Appalachian State, because I think we all know how good of a program that is. But it's the same thing when Miami went to App State. But that was just once, right? Like that was just one home and home. Virginia Tech went there, got beat, and said, you know what? We should do it again. We should keep doing this with Old Dominion. I probably would have ran away from that as fast as I could.
I will say this week one, not as good as last year's, just in terms of like huge marquee games. But I do think there's some extraordinarily interesting games. Like obviously the marquee games are the games where you have the Florida States and LSUs and you have the Georgias and Oregons taking on each other. But last year was wild, right? Just like think of the top 2 teams. You had Georgia taking on Clemson, and you had Alabama taking on Miami.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just because hindsight's 2020. That's probably it. Because I was pretty excited about the Eric King.
Oh no, last year
with
like
Miami.
but like yeah, last year's week 1 had so much more hype around it than this year's. Yeah.
There was so much more potential, and the only one that really lived up to that potential was Clemson and Georgia.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a score fest or anything like that, but it was still like exciting as hell. Like
yeah. It was a slugfest.
It was one of those
the 2 best front sevens in college football.
Sometimes I'll say like some of these memories that people have is like, man, it was a defensive slugfest. It was great. Sometimes it's not great defense. It's really bad offense.
Yeah.
That was a really well played defensive game.
Sometimes it's 2000. Sometimes it's 2008, and the Browns are taking on the Texans on Thursday Night Football. That's not good defense.
No,
that's terrible offense.
And people try and use that.
Sometimes
all the time.
it's 2011 Alabama against 2011 LSU, where it's just sledgehammer v tank, and it's just awesome to watch. One of them makes you sad. The other one is enjoyable to watch. So that was that one last year. But I think this year, not the marquee matchups, but like a Utah, Florida.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is take a break because I got to figure out why Virginia Tech's playing at Old Dominion twice in 4 years.
Somebody has
to. We're gonna take a break. We'll figure that out. We'll let you know next. Also get you ready for 3 and Out. I'm gonna call Sean Quinn, our good friend, who's now up at Virginia Tech, and figure out what the hell's going on. We'll let you know next. This is Second Down on ESPN Radio. All right, you learn something new every day. This is Second Down on ESPN Radio. Christian Gokel alongside PJ Zuko. Glad to have you with us here on this Tuesday afternoon. Once again, you learn something new every day.
Drop
Apparently,
some
way
knowledge
back
on
in
us.
2013, and the way back, Virginia Tech and Old Dominion agreed on a long-term home and home schedule. This is like the anti-expansion mindset.
Agreed.
Virginia Tech and Old Dominion are going to play every year, home and home, through 2031.
It's insane.
2031, PJ.
What? Who and why? Who looked at that and said, "Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that's
you're
good.
right. This is solid." I can't see anyone else we would like to put on our schedule for the foreseeable 15
Well,
years.
okay, so here's the one thought I have on this is Norfolk, where Old Dominion is it just a recruiting hotbed? They're like, hey, we're basically going to get another home game every other year.
Maybe
They get to recruit that Norfolk area. But Old Dominion, being the savvy jerks that they are, and I say that in like the most complimentary way possible, if you want to buy tickets to that game, PJ, you know what you got to do?
How much do you have to pay?
You got to buy season tickets.
Oh my gosh! Goodness gracious! Come on now.
No, I love that. You want to come and pack us out, Hokie Nation? You
Yeah,
better be
okay,
willing to break
alright.
us off.
You better be getting ready for several recruiting trips down here because you're getting season tickets and you're going to use them. Okay, I get that then a little bit. Trying to protect the home turf a little bit with the season tickets.
So there's a few things I've seen that Texas Tech did that. So TCU fans couldn't take over their stadium. No, I think it's reverse. TCU did that so Texas Tech fans can't take over their stadium,
Right.
which I love that. So yeah, if you guys want to do that, you're gonna have to buy season tickets and fund all of our stuff. Which, I mean, not a bad deal. You buy the season tickets if you really want to go to that game, sell them on StubHub. It's fine.
Yeah.
3 and Outs coming up next. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, and Kevin Thomas. Breaking down the Austin Riley deal, as well as just the blockbuster trade sending Juan Soto to San Diego, which I guess is good for the Braves because you don't have to see him in division anymore. Not great for the Braves because you potentially have to see him in the playoffs. 3:30, we'll be joined by our good friend Robbie Ross, the voice of Paulson Stadium. Georgia Southern kicking off their fall camp today. We'll get an update from Robbie on that one. Also going to be joined by Gaurav Vidak of Battery Power at 5 o'clock. Rich Stiles of the Back Nine Boys coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. And then at 5:20, you'll hear from Jason Fitz of ESPN Radio. All that coming up on 3 and Out. If you miss any portion of our show, you can check it out on ESPNCoastal.com.